Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am Courtney Anderson. Today we have an episode that is part of our HR Heroes Hangout. And of course, our HR Heroes Hangout series is dedicated to those unsung heroes who are out dispersed around the world doing everything in their power to work, to elevate, enhance, and improve organizations and individuals, and helping them surpass their goals and get things done. Human resources heroes are out there managing all of the fascinating, absolutely, really, truly fascinating things about people. And when we look at this specific title, this title is Make Your Staff Members HR Fans and Supporters. Make your staff members HR Fans and Supporters. Now, this is a companion show. We did recently a show that was how to make your managers and executives HR fans and supporters. And that's because we have a whole different relationship there. We have our executives who have the authority and the power to approve our budgets, our resources, and we need, ideally, for them to be fans or super fans because they're the ones that are going to have the partnership, the collaboration, the approval to facilitate HR heroes from absolutely being able to get out there and make the most incredible changes possible. So that's a different audience. This is a complimentary episode where we're talking about our staff. This is our staff. So this might just be employees. It might be contractors. Could even be vendors. This is about having a relationship with people who really, if they're not properly engaged, educated, and enlightened, may view, and this may be difficult for some of you in our community to hear, and you might think, well, Courtney, that's insane. But I'm going to make this argument. There are some people, especially staff members, who don't have a lot of knowledge or experience or even interest in HR. And they may feel that it's just some sort of administrative office that you go to sign paperwork, or you go there if you're in trouble, almost like a young school child would feel like you go to the principal's office when you're in trouble. Uh-oh, you've been called to the principal's office. You're in trouble. And some organizations, that's how staff members feel about HR. People would say to a coworker, oh, you're going to HR. What did you do? What did you do wrong? That's not the right perspective or approach or understanding. I mean, we are HR heroes. This entire series is dedicated to people who are out going above and beyond in their organizations, in their personal growth, in their education and credentialing as an HR professional. These are people who know the power, the privilege, the honor to be in the human resources field. So how does it happen? How does it happen where some staff may perceive HR as some sort of either punishment or some sort of awful administrative task? In the show notes, I outlined something that I have shared with human resources professionals around the world, whether I'm at their organization providing on-site customized training and corporate education, or I have the pleasure and the privilege of being part of a conference or a seminar through either SHRM or other global human resources organizations, talking to HR heroes, right? That's the best exciting thing, is when I'm in a room of people who love this area, who are dedicated to it, and are really enthusiastic about taking it to the highest level. And one thing I've pointed out that I mentioned in the show notes was human resources, ideally, big picture from a staff perspective, it deals with money, power, and respect. Now, I don't know how you can go into a room of anybody that's a staff member at any entity in the world and be talking about their money, not just money in the abstract, like, oh, let's talk about the national debt of countries and certain parts of South America, or let's ponder what might be the ramifications if we made an adjustment to some of our macroeconomic models. No, we're not talking about some sort of abstract, out there, theoretical, analysis of money. I'm talking about their money. I'm talking about how much you get paid, right? When you get paid, if you're going to get paid more, if you're going to get paid less. I mean, literally, you are talking about their money. And when you explain things that way, I've always had a very high engagement rate when I share human resource content when I do a corporate education program, because I explain at the very beginning that old understanding of a cliche we have when we're conveying information. You have to answer the question, what's in it for them? And the really great and easy thing about being in HR or being a conduit for HR activities, as I often am, is you're talking to people in the room about their money. Of course they want to listen to this. I mean, they want to know how much they're going to get paid. And they want to know, is it going to be every other week? Is it going to be every week? Is it going to be monthly? They want to know, are they going to get a cost of living increase? Are they going to get a bonus? Are they going to be eligible for promotion? They want to know, how much money am I getting and when am I getting it? That's a big deal. So that's so much of what your staff do understand at some level about human resources. And one of the things to help engage and begin the conversion process is a fan acquisition conversion process. So you're converting someone who's not a fan, not really a fan, into a fan, or even ideally a super fan. And part of that is explaining, again, as we talked about in the companion episode, when you convey information, it's not about you and your interest in what you want to convey. It's about your audience. You have to literally turn all of your content around and think about it from the perspective of the person who's receiving it. And then talk about what they want to talk about, the way that they would be able to digest the information. I mentioned again in the companion episode, one of the challenges that many subject matter experts in any field struggle with is when you're an expert on something, ideally you're an expert because you're really into it, meaning that you like this for free and on your own for free time, for fun. You like to read about whatever your content is. You're interested in discussing it. You're passionate about it. I mean, that's sort of the ideal, HR hero, right? You're not just that you know what you're doing, but that you really, it's fun. That's why you're a hero. That's why you're, out there and engaged at the highest level of sort of spreading, programs, content to enhance things and make them better. You wake up excited. I wrote a piece for a book I contributed to. It's been a long time now. And it was a book, it was a whole bunch of motivational speakers were approached by a publisher and sort of, we all sort of contributed parts to this book. And I remember, and I haven't looked at it in a while, but I remember when I wrote it, I wrote about sort of the excitement and the thrill. And this sounds so, for people who are not excited and passionate and engaged in what they do, it sounds like it's either a fairy tale or it's just the nerdiest thing you've ever heard of. But my part of what I contributed to this book was, when I wake up 90% of the time, so 90% of my mornings or evenings, depending on what work schedule I'm on, when I wake up, I am excited. And it's almost a feeling that you, like a child has on a big holiday. Is it their birthday? Are they going to get gifts? What's going to happen? And especially if it's a big day that they've been, sort of counting down on the calendar and circled it and been excited, or I know when I was younger, when you're young, you're excited about all kinds of things. Maybe it's a big day where you're going to the zoo or an amusement park or something that you've been looking forward to and you're just so excited. That anticipation. What's going to happen? How is it going to be? And you've sort of dreamed about it. That's how I feel 90% of the time about just my regular, work life. I'm excited. I wake up with that anticipation. What's going to happen? If I'm traveling, it's always exciting, especially if it's somewhere I've never been or haven't been in a long time. What's it going to be like? What am I going to learn from the people? If I'm doing some task, whether it's something solitary in my home office, maybe I'm writing that day, or I'm out, somewhere doing a media appearance, it's still exciting because I'm still wondering what's going to happen. When I sit down to write, I don't know. When I sit down to create a program, I'm not sure what's going to happen. And when I go out to do a media appearance or to do a corporate educational event on site at a location around the world, I'm excited. I don't know what's going to happen. It's exciting. And I wrote about that, and that's the kind of passion, and that word sometimes is overused, right? But real HR heroes are like that, because this is a really interesting field. It's everything about people. So, it's all the good stuff, right? Oh, so-and-so, did an amazing job, and such person was recognized with this acclaim or accolade, and maybe someone received a promotion. That's great. But it also is, oh my goodness, they did what at the office? These outrageous tales of what humans do. It's endlessly fascinating. And I think that the excitement needs to be conveyed to the staff so that you can begin your fan acquisition process, but you have to always stop before you send out your memo, before you call an all hands on deck meeting. You have got to stop and think about the audience, and you've got to put the information in a context, in a form that immediately, and I don't mean save this for 30 minutes into what you're sharing. You need to upfront and immediately explain what's in it for them. And again, this is a really easy task. And like I said, I've had the honor of going to organizations large and small around the world for 14 years doing this. And it's easy to get people's attention because human resources, or anything you do with human resources, believe it or not, is at a core. To a staff member, it's about their money, and they do care, and they are interested in that. How much am I getting paid? When am I getting paid? Are we changing something? That is the beginning of it, but it's also about power, and power is everything, and it could be power sort of in the larger construct that we think, oh, I'm getting a big promotion, and so is going to be some chief executive, or it's just sort of regular power issues. What do you do when your coworker's driving you crazy? What do you do if somebody's, bullying you or harassing you? What do you do if somebody ignores you and won't even respond to you when you're supposed to be, working together with them? How do you deal with these power struggles? And you're also dealing with the core issue. The core issue that underpins, I'm going to go out on this limb and I'm just going to say it. It's an absolute, and we all know that all the programs I do, I have caution against absolutes, but I'm going to do this. In every single employment issue that becomes a lawsuit, okay, so lawsuits where someone files legal action against another entity, anything that's employment law, so wrongful termination, negligent hiring, any type of discrimination that's not an actual discrimination claim, meaning there wasn't really somebody who just, said, I hate all women and I'm not going to ever promote a woman, but you have a person who's not in that situation, but they still are going to go forward and say they were not treated fairly. All of these claims are based on what people perceive to be respect, more specifically a lack of it. And I was actually in a meeting room very recently, and it was a work situation, and people were talking ostensibly about this work. But what came up at the end of this meeting that people got the most, fired up about was when they started talking about respect. And the way that they articulated their rage, that they felt they'd been disrespected at work, it was, and how visceral and how raw and how real it was. That's the core when people file claims. And what I mean is, even when horrible illegal things happen in organizations, a rare, tiny percentage, but of all the organizations in the world, yeah, there's organizations right now all over the world doing horribly illegal things. Some of them are discrimination, where you don't hire or make decisions based on the work, but you make decisions based on, somebody's gender or somebody's religion. Some of them are just flat-out crimes. Where people physically abuse other people. Sometimes they sexually abuse other people, and that might be under sexual harassment. Sometimes they just physically abuse other people. It's an assault. It happens. There are people who commit financial crimes. There's all kind of fraud, and theft, and malfeasance that's happening. It's happening all over the world, because it's a minuscule percentage of overall groups, but that means there's always somebody out there doing horrible things. People don't run to law enforcement or run to file lawsuits because illegal bad things happen. That's not usually what triggers it. What happens is that they feel disrespected. And when that happens, then they'll go. And they feel like at that point it's a bridge too far. And it's, as a lawyer, when I used to practice full-time law, what I mean by that is that used to be what I did all day, every day was, get up and go to my law firm in downtown Austin and handle legal issues. But one of the reasons I started doing corporate education and corporate training consulting was because I had all these employment cases. And I kept having people come to my law office, and they were mad, but they had everything they would possibly need. The lawyer, they had their employee handbooks. This is before the internet technology we have today, so it was not all online. They would literally have big handbooks, and they'd have everything highlighted with markers and little stickies. It might be a 500-page volume, but they've read all of it, and they want me to look at all the sections that they believe that the organization violated their rights, they were disrespected, and they have all their paper documents from employment reviews. They are ready to go, and the thing that motivates them, and they always say at some level, it's the principle. And what that's code for is it's how they feel emotionally. They feel they were disrespected, and when that happens, they're not your fan or your super fan. They're your enemy. And they turn on the organization because they feel emotionally it was just too much. Until you get to that point, though, people will tolerate and accept horrible abuse. I've been places where I can't even believe what's happened. It's so illegal and awful. But people didn't complain or go to anyone or, call a lawyer or call the media or anything because, it has to get to that level where they feel their personal disrespect outweighs everything else. When that's triggered, then they're your enemy. Our show is about how to make them your fan. The easy part is just do the opposite. So I'm explaining what makes them go to lawyers, what makes them, become so, enraged that they're going to do everything they possibly can to try to, destroy an organization. And I'm telling you, it's all about the principle, which is all that is code for they felt so disrespected. That's what makes them angry. It's never about money. It's never about money. I used money and said that's the easy way to get people's attention because it is, because people make decisions based on their paychecks. You always have a group of people that work at an organization who don't need money. Some of them are senior executives or in high-level office holders, but a lot of them aren't. It might just be someone who's a staff member that doesn't make much money at that job, but they don't need it for whatever reason. Maybe their family has resources and they never need to worry about money, or they inherited money, or they just worked on their own and they're independently wealthy and they just do this work because they enjoy it. The money, though, is part of their decision-making. So even if someone doesn't need money, you still look to see, okay, when's the money coming in? Oh, okay, well, what am I going to do with it? Maybe I'll invest it or, spend it on something fun or whatever. But they notice it. So you mentioned the money because that is something that everybody that is interacting with human resources has in common, whether or not they have the same perspective on the money, right? Some people might live paycheck to paycheck where they literally can't eat, until they get the next paycheck. But everyone, though, does get a paycheck, and they do notice it at some level. The core issue for human resources to make people your fan and super fan that are staff members is you have to have them feel that they're respected. Now, ideally, the easiest way to make them feel that they're respected is to actually respect them. And that sounds a little bit maybe odd, but they're two different things. Me feeling disrespected and being disrespected are two totally, sometimes unrelated issues, right? Perception is a reality. So my perception of whether or not I feel disrespected is my reality. That's not mean that it's actual reality for everyone. It just means that's my world. And so what does HR do to use the tools of consistent applied respect. The tools of respect with the attention getter of, hey, this is all about you and your money. I mentioned in the show notes this idea of stealth marketing. And what I'm arguing is this. Human resources cannot be reactive. Human resources shouldn't be sort of like the fire department. You're just, I always think that looks like such a fascinating career and so dangerous. I mean, I could never do it. I'm not brave enough. I'd be too frightened to be a fire person. But you're a fire person. So in between fires, there's maintenance work, there's office paperwork and whatnot. But a lot of times there's some downtime and people wait for something to happen. And if you've been to firehouses, they have, laundry facilities and food facilities because people are there, doing laundry and sleeping and eating and everything, sort of, waiting for something happens, and then they immediately jump up and go out and show that bravery. That's not HR. Now, I've been to places, very few, very, very few, or I've studied places that I, not firsthand, where people do have a reactive approach. And that means they're like the fire department. They just sort of wait, oh, what? A manager says that somebody needs to be fired? Oh, okay. And that's the first you've heard of it, And the managers felt, that they've had, problems, for 6 months or 6 years. The HR didn't know. And that's because there's no positive relationship where managers and executives that we did in the first complimentary episode feel that HR is an asset, an advantage, or is going to make their lives easier. And if they don't think that, if they think HR makes my life harder, like if I go to those people and I have to fill out paperwork and they're going to waste my time, they're not going to come to you. They're going to try, quote, to fix it themselves, and they're only going to go to HR as a last resort, which means things have escalated so high. So, things have gotten worse. So what initially might have been a very simple problem, it's gone on, for 8 months, and now it's an awful problem. And the reason managers and executives didn't go to HR early is because they don't think HR helps. They think HR makes everything more difficult, makes their life more challenging, it wastes their time, and they're not going to come to you. And it's the same thing with the staff. The staff aren't going to come to HR if they don't see how you make their lives easier. If they think all you do is make their lives harder, waste their time, or people only go there to get punished, they're not coming to you. They're only going to go to HR is, again, last resort, which means your entire organization is set up for failure. HR is, ideally, it's a 360-degree situation. HR professionals are, one, making sure they're surpassing their own individual goals, right? So their own education, continuing education, professional networking and association, so that they're on top of all of the different legal issues and business issues that they need to know. And it's a lot. It's a huge area of knowledge. HR also should serve your internal team members, your staff members, right? Ideally, you should make their lives easier. Oh, I want to talk about my money. Great. Here we are. And let's be proactive. How can we help? So ideally, if you're not the fire department and reacting, but you're proactive, people start to think, HR, yeah, those people were really helpful. I went over there and I had my performance review and I talked to them a little bit about some of my career goals, and then they, sent me over to a referral for some of their individual professional career counseling. And then, I talked to that person and they were, gave me some diagnostic tests and were telling me about some, possible career options. And then somebody was referring me to some, additional training I didn't even know about, like HR. Wow. What? That's great. If you make their lives easier, then they come to you. And more importantly, you're there all the time. That's what the stealth marketing was. I talked about stealth marketing of respect. Respect is the feeling that I perceive that I'm treated the way I think I should be treated. This does not mean that I'm treated the way that other people want to be treated. One of the problems with the whole concept of all of this corporate education I go to, where people are taught, you treat people the way that you'd like to be treated. No, you don't. That's a disaster. That would mean that I go and tell people, what I think, and tell jokes that I think are funny, and treat people how I think. Unless they share my sense of humor and my life experience, we're in deep trouble. I don't treat people the way I want to be treated. I treat people the way they want to be treated. That's the whole point. And we do a whole bunch of other programs, and I'll do some shows on some specific examples of where that creates harassment problems and all types of issues. Hostile work environment. The stealth marketing is this. Human resources should be viewed as something that makes their lives easier. If you're a staff member, what are you interested in? Well, that's what human resources ideally should know. It shouldn't just be like, okay, you're onboarded. You know, you filled out the application, you filled out this paperwork, you filled out all these forms, and then I never saw HR again until something bad happened. Or, you know, maybe something good happened and I had to fill out another form because that's not the relationship that should be happening. The relationship should be an ongoing relationship. Hey, that's the office that I go to, and they have all kinds of information, professional development, about other, training and opportunities, educational. Typically the weird thing is HR has a lot of benefits, especially in large organizations, right? Educational opportunities. People can go get free educational certifications or degrees, and minuscule percentages of people use this. A lot of them don't even understand what it is. I blame that on people who are, unfortunately, and I'm just going to mention it, we don't talk about it often and we don't ever like to. There's some people who are in the HR field, and they are not HR heroes. In fact, some of them don't even really care about HR. Some of them just sort of needed a job, and some kind of way they got into HR, and they don't really care, and they're not interested in it. And if they can, quote, have less people, quote, bothering them, then they like that. And it breaks my heart. I mean, that's like hearing about a medical doctor, right, who's like, oh, I can't stand these stupid patients bothering me while I'm working at the ER. What? I don't want to be your patient. That's kind of the whole thing. Like, you're here to help me, right? And I'm not going to dwell on this, but it exists. And I think what happens sometimes just a few times it's happened, either firsthand or organizations I've studied, where we have this sort of, reactive fire department approach, human resources does everything they possibly can to stop people from communicating with them. Either too many communications, too many emails, too many notes. It's so much stuff. What? It's not digestible. You don't need to send like an entire legal treatise to your whole staff. For what? Explain to them the big picture of what the bottom line is. Hey, if something happens, you have a baby, you adopt a child, you're sick, or a family member's sick, you can get unpaid leave. That's a federal law. Do they need to know the name of the law and all the details of the law? No. But they do need to understand HR is a place that does really great things for you. We make your life easier. We talk to you about your money. We talk to you about your long-term career. We talk to you about opportunities, either internal to the organization or in the field. We help connect you with ongoing resources for your individual development, for your educational and training support. We're here at all times to be this resource. And look at all these other goodies, whatever benefits that are available, voluntary, if there are any mandatory legal benefits. But instead of this being this super awesome place, it becomes this place nobody wants to go to, and it's just so sad. Everything about HR is great for your staff. It's their money, it's opportunity, it's information, it's benefits. Just make it easy and digestible and simple and fun. It is fun. They're working. They want to work. Obviously, they got a job. It's so simple to set up a system to convert your staff to fans, because everything HR does really is to benefit them if it works out. And I am so thrilled that you joined me for this show today. You can always come to CourtneyAnderson.com. Thank you.